All right, very good. So, what we talked about last time was chapter 4, Proverbs 4. Parents have a responsibility to raise their children. Um, and I went through a list of like, it's not this person's responsibility. It's not this person's responsibility. It's not the school district's responsibility to raise your kids or government officials or blah, blah, blah. Like, it's the parent's responsibility. Now, use wisdom. Like, am I going to stand up here and say, there's only one way to raise your children and it's this way? Like, no, that's not wisdom. You might have a life situation that does not allow for my only way to be holy. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You need to use wisdom. So, is the only way to raise a Christian child homeschooling? No, but there are pros and cons, depending on the school district. There's, you watch any kind of any kind of media on the internet about school, just type in school district meeting and you're going to see a lot of madness going on in a lot of different school districts. Is that coming to local school districts here? Probably. I mean, eventually it will, but you need to decide that for yourself. That's where you need wisdom. Like, are you gonna the way it's usually portrayed is like, are you going to send your kids to government school to get brainwashed and be another woke idiot or whatever? Like, maybe. Maybe that's the way to describe it. Or maybe you're engaging child as parents should and you're counteracting stuff that school. It's your responsibility to make sure that they need to know about the Lord, that they trust in Him. That's your responsibility. How you go about doing that, practice wisdom. Now, if they're spending 8 hours a day with a teacher that doesn't believe the same as you, that's a lot of influence. You would be wise to consider that. But I'm not going to stand up here and be like, you have to homeschool your kids. Is it wise to do that? I mean, we're homeschooling our kids. That's our choice. That's what we chose to do. Doesn't mean that that's what you have to do, but you need to consider all the things and make a wise choice. Like, are there kids that are homeschooled that just end up rejecting the faith? Yes. Remember, these aren't guarantees. What is for sure is that it's your responsibility to do this as a parent. So the father shares family wisdom. I guess I didn't want it to come across as like hammering down. It's things you need to consider. Anyways, all right. Father shares his family wisdom, right? And then he warns of two paths. And then the father appeals to his son's entire being, which lots of body language that talks about that. Again, this is just more recap. Father makes appeal to his son, so it's supported by history. What I meant by that was the father quotes his own father in teaching his son. This isn't something that he's just made up and he's like, yeah, just listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. It's like, no, this is tried and true wisdom. Like, seek wisdom, seek understanding. I'm not making this up. Your life will be a lot better. Please. And he quotes his own father in doing that. And again, wisdom is personified as a woman, and her blessings are praised. Like, if you embrace her, if you hug her, if you have an intimate relationship with wisdom, then you will receive her blessings. Those blessings are praised in verses 6-9. All right. There's two paths you can choose. There's the way of blessing and wisdom and blessing. There's the path of folly and evil and destruction. And it's self-destruction, right? So the father makes an appeal to follow me. That means, fathers, you need to be walking on the right path yourself. You can't give your children what you don't already have. Like, read your Bible, say your prayers. Like, what have you taught them from out of the Bible? Or, hey, and I think I brought up I last week I think I was like, oh, if you're gonna go change the tires over and change the oil in the car, bring your kids in there with you. It will take forever, but you're giving them your best, training them in things that they don't know what to do yet. Like, will it take forever? It will, but it'll pay dividends in their life later. Like, I don't know. I just think of it of training a new person on the front desk at the Alaska Rock Gym. Like, hire a new person, you bring them on, and they're confident until you start going over all of the things. And I have like a 14-page checklist of all of the things. It takes like 12 hours to get through. I'm like, it's going to take a while. And they're like, yeah, cool. It's just a front desk. People can die. If you don't warn them about the dangers of climbing, they could get seriously injured or die. Oh, what? It's like, yeah, you got to tell them that. Tell them the injuries. Like, yeah, sprained ankles, torn ACLs, dislocated elbows, dislocated shoulders, broken femurs. No big deal. If you fall from the top of the wall, you could die. Moving on. Like, all of those, but it takes so long. And then there's a ton of questions. All things that, someone in my position, I go, these are really basic things. They don't know that. Yes, be patient. All the questions. Very similar. Do those things. And he warns of the evil way. Don't go down the evil path. Verses 14, 19. We'll read that real quick. Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not into the way of evil men. Avoid it. Pass not by it. Turn from it, and pass away. Verse 15 is so powerful. It's just verb, 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 verb. Don't do it. Right? Avoid it. Pass not by it. Turn from it. Just don't. Or they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause someone to fall. Wow. That's a sick person. They have such a need to cause someone to stumble. They can't, keeps them up at night. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the just is a shining light, and shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. Which is interesting because they can't sleep unless they make somebody stumble. That word fall and stumble are the same word. And then they just don't understand why they're stumbling. Nice little irony there. My son, attend unto my words, and incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of thine heart. Again, starts in the heart. For they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. Notice all the body parts that are mentioned. Right? Let not, it says, attend unto my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep them in the midst of thine heart. For they are life unto those that find it, health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Put away from thee froward mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee. Let thine eyes look right on, and thine eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. So, eyes, ears, flesh, heart, lips, eyelashes, or eyelids, I think. Yeah, eyelids. Hands, feet. Protect your heart. Protect your heart. Out of it are all the issues of life. From your heart, the rest of your life follows. Right? It's like a logical argument. Get the premise at the beginning right. Everything else should follow. That's kind of your heart. Wherever your heart is, the rest of your life will follow. So, commentators, this is a Net Bible note. Commentators note the use of the body in this section: ear, eyes, flesh, heart, lips, eyes, feet, hands, feet. Each is here's a fancy word, synecdoche. So, basically, it's a part representing the whole. Say eyes, but it really means the whole person. So, the synecdoche of Heart representing the whole. The total accumulation symbolizes or signifies the complete person in the process. So if the son listens to his father, the whole body will be healthy. And then not only that, keep them in the midst of thy heart. So our verse alert last week, last week, was verse 23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. What's really interesting is it says, keep thy heart with all diligence. It's like protect your heart with all protecting. Kind of the more kind of a literal way of putting that, right? And to keep means to guard, to watch, to limit access and movement of a person or objects in and out of an area, implying protection to or from the object being guarded. So if your heart is the thing being guarded, you're limiting access and movement of the, of things going in and out of that object. You're guarding it, you're keeping it, you're protecting it. That's what you need to do with your heart. That's what you need to do. That's what he's encouraging his son, encouraging his children. Guard your heart, protect it. Everything that goes in is going to get lodged in there, and it will influence how you live the rest of your life. So be discerning in what you let into your heart. Father's wisdom is to be in the middle of your heart and protect it from evil influences. So keep thy heart with all diligence. So keep, preserve, keep, maintain, protect, cause to be safe from danger. Your heart. And remember, your heart is your mind, yourself, your inner person, the seat of emotions, the intellect of volition. You do it with all diligence, right? All vigilance, guarding, custody, imprisonment, confinement. State of imprisoning or confining a prisoner, often with a focus on the place one is in the state of confinement. So that's from the Dictionary of Bible Languages in Hebrew. Again, it's like you need to protect what is going in and out with all diligence. You need to be vigilant about it. The issues of life. This is the starting point, the source, the wellspring of your life. It's the source of every event and activity that proceeds in your life. And again, in verse 23, the heart. Verse 23 says, and this is Garrett in his New American Commentary. Verse 23 says, it's the wellspring of life. The heart here, as always, refers not to the physical organ, but to the mind, and even the whole personality of the individual. It is the wellspring of life, in that the capacity to live with joy and vigor ultimately comes from within, and not from circumstances. The corrupt heart draws one down to the grave, but wisdom protects the heart from that corruption. What I found really interesting is that middle statement. It is the wellspring of life, in that the capacity to live with joy and vigor ultimately comes from within and not from circumstance. When Jesus is talking about the Beatitudes, he announces the Beatitudes. He says, well, we say blessed, right? Blessed are poor in spirit, those that hunger and thirst after righteousness. We say blessed, that's just a fancy way of saying blessed. Make it two syllables. But it means happy. You're happy. But it's a happiness that can't be touched by circumstance. That's the thing. And that same, like, at least in the Greek, when you're in the New Testament, the same Greek word is makarios. It gets used in, I say secular, other Greek writings that are about, the Greek gods. And it's attributed to the state of the gods, because their happiness is not contingent on the circumstance, the idea. And you're supposed to have a happiness and a joy, right? Joy unspeakable and full of glory, even when circumstances are terrible. How can you have that? Well, it's because it's in your heart. And I can't touch your heart. You have a truth that's buried deep down in your heart, and it's there. It's something you can lean on. No one can touch that. If the resurrection is true, if it's really true, no one can touch that. So it doesn't matter how bad the circumstances get. You can still have joy. You can still be happy. Now, are you going to be like, is it going to be awesome going through awful circumstances? Of course not. But that's not what this is talking about. It's saying that the heart is the wellspring of life, and you have the capacity to live with joy and vigor, not based on your circumstances, because your circumstances can change. But this truth in your heart doesn't change. That's how you can have joy. It's all in the heart. It's all in the heart. It's super important. Out of that, the rest of your life follows. So, what are some applications of that? Watch your mouth. Froward mouth, falsehoods, perversion, morally corrupt speech, perverse lips, crooked, corrupt talk. Don't do that. Don't do that. Your eyes. Your eyes need to look directly and intently in front of you for the righteous path. Squint for a clearer view. And your feet, keep the path level. Live a righteous life. Don't leave the path for evil. So that's it. Like, watch your heart, protect it. It's super important. Everything that goes in and out of your heart will influence the rest of your life. Kind of like on the way here, driving here, my daughter goes, she asked me if she can hang out with, have a play date with one of her friends from school. And like, I already talked about before, but she really wants to hang out with her friend, but her friend's not a very good influence. And, because she was going to Shaw, as the crow flies that way. Anyway, she's going to Shaw Elementary, which was a pretty good school. She would come home and talk about lesbians and bisexuality and all these, all that kind of thing. Gay, straight, sexuality, that stuff. She would come home talking about that stuff. She's like, well, my friend, one that she wants to hang out with, my friend says that she's bi. Like, she's 9 at the time. Like, you're 9. Why are you even talking about this? This is not important at all. You shouldn't even be considering these things at this point in your life. Eventually, we'll have to talk about those things, and you should talking to your children about this age appropriate way. But it's like, you're 9. Why? What's the influence of the kids around you? I want to hang out with her. I don't really want to encourage that. That's hard for her. They're really close friends when they were in school. Telling you no. I don't think that's good for you. Are we going to walk through this? Carefully? Hopefully. But, like, and I tell her that, and she's just like, she's told me once before, oh, but I could be a good influence on her. Maybe. A little. It's always easier to be drugged towards evil, drugged towards the righteous. Super important. Who you hang around with, who your friends are. Very important. That was one of the major reasons that we homeschooled this. She comes home every day talking about this stuff. You're 8, 9, 10 years old. Why? Talking about this stuff. Emma's coming up right behind her. Hears about all this stuff too. Even younger. Like, consider those things. So, speaking about sex, chapter 5. What a segue. Nice. Man, chapter 5 is great. Chapter 5 is really good. We're going to read the whole thing, and then, we'll get started. Chapter 5. My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear unto my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou should ponder the paths of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh to the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. Say, how I've hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear unto them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. There's a change. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as a loving hind in a pleasant roe. Let her breasts satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For the ways of a man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. The opening paragraph of Garrett's New Testament commentary on this chapter was just too good not to read to you. So here it is. The Bible does not hide from or obscure the power of the temptation to illicit sex. In language that is refreshingly clear and direct, without self-indulging in titillation, the text warns the reader of the debacle that awaits him should he succumb in the area, and at the same time, or in this area, and at the same time, promises profound sexual joy to those whose hearts are chaste and loving. If the church is to do its duty, it must be no less clear in its teaching. To assume that nice Christian young people do not struggle in these areas, or to speak only in whispers and innuendo on the grounds that they are inappropriate for the Christian pulpit, is no less than the gross neglect of duty on the church's part. Whether one is dealing with the ritual prostitution of a fertility cult, which is one of the main contexts of most of the prophets, that's how the Israelites were worshiping other gods, was a temple prostitution for fertility cults. Oh, Tammuz! But anyways, so whether one is dealing with the ritual prostitution of a fertility cult, the ordinary prostitute on the street or in a magazine, or the simple lure of extramarital sex, the temptations and dangers are the same. Like, that's a great way to put that. If there's a place where you should get good sex education, it should be in the church. So many times I've talked with me and Tammy have talked about this, I don't know how many times, and with a few of you as well. It's like, get this idea of like, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Nope, don't do it. Don't you dare do it. Don't you, nope, you're a young person. Don't do it, don't do it. It's bad. All these bad consequences, all these terrible things. Okay, now you're married, go ahead. Now turn that switch off and enjoy sex and marriage. Like, but everything that's been input has been terrible and bad and not good. And how am I supposed to go, oh, flip that over to, okay, great. Now it's all good. That's not going to happen quickly. Right? I mean, it's not. There's going to be a lot of hurdles to overcome. There's going to be eventually there's going to be frustration. Well, then how do you deal with that? Nobody told me about, it's like men and women are different. Talked about this a few weeks ago, right? Like, they're different. So it's not going to mean exactly the same thing for a man as it is for a woman. It's going to be different. What are those differences? And how do you make it to where you're not manipulating your spouse doing something? Like, where's your heart first? And then, because like what we talked about last time was, if for women in general, relational intimacy leads to sexual intimacy, but for men, sexual intimacy leads to relational intimacy. Those are the opposite. And if that's true, then it's like, okay, here's an illustration. I heard this one. Have you guys read the Five Love Languages, Gary Chapman? Most people kind of understand what I'm talking about. There's 5 love languages, right? And so it's like, this is, if you do this thing, it speaks to your spouse's heart as I love you. So whatever speaks love to your spouse, that's what you should be doing for them, right? And there's physical touch, words of affirmation, giving gifts, quality time, acts of service. Yeah. So imagine 5 ping pong tables on the stage, each one representing a love language, right? Tammy's over there at acts of service, waiting for me to serve the ball. And I'm over at physical touch, just serving so many balls. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm ready to play. She's like, what? Like, that doesn't, no. So then I have to stop over to her ping pong table and begin to play. Like, that's, like, if you don't know something like that, you don't know how, and that's just like one illustration of, like, you need to love your spouse the way that they receive it, that it speaks love to their heart. That sex is wrapped up in that as well. And what this is also talking about, there is temptation to illicit sex, but to guard against that, you have sexual expression within marriage. Go ahead. There's one, the commentator Ortland, what he says, it should be fun and frequent. Fun. We'll get there. Probably not today though. But Ortland, he says, sex is like fire. In the fireplace, it keeps us warm. Outside the fireplace, it burns the house down. Proverbs 5 is saying, keep the fire in the marital fireplace and stoke that fire as hot as you can. Good advice. All right, so break this down. There's a lengthy warning against adultery. It begins with a typical exhortation for the son to pay attention to the wisdom of his father, verses 1 and 2. Then there's a warning. A forbidden woman may be alluring. She's deadly, verses 3 through 6. Consequences of not avoiding her. Economic ruin and social shame, verses 7 through 14. Fidelity in marriage is the proper outlet for sexual expression, verses 15 through 20. And there's a conclusion. General warning about the fate of the wicked. Adulterous people. That's kind of the context of it. Verses 21 to 23. So the enticement starts talk. And I don't have a PowerPoint. It starts with talk. Starts with speech, right? Father says, hey, listen to me. Why? Because the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. It sounds really good. It's flattery that inflates the ego of the man. She talks to him in a way that maybe his wife doesn't talk to him. And it starts to draw his heart away. It's sweet and it's smooth. It sounds so good. This is good for me. It's that tree with fruit that looks so good. But you're not supposed to have it, so it makes it even look. But it's bitter. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a 2-edged sword. Bitter. It's like And this word for bitter is the same one used in the two examples that I'll bring up. It's like finding undrinkable water in the desert. That sound familiar? People of Israel escape Egypt, they go through the Red Sea, wandering in the desert for 3 days. We're thirsty. Come to some water, and what is it? Bitter. Undrinkable. Ooh. Same word. Or it's as bitter as the death of the loved ones. Ruth. Naomi changes her name to bitter. Yeah, she goes from Naomi to Mara. Bitter. Like, call me bitter. I've lost my husband and my 3 sons. Now I've got nothing. Except Ruth. I guess she's all right, but no, got nothing. It's a two-edged sword, right? It cuts both ways. This is from the Net Bible and has a note here. It says the Hebrew has like a sword of two mouths. So that when it says two-edged sword, literally in the Hebrew, it's two mouths. Like the edge of the sword devours. So it's like a sword with two mouths, meaning a double-edged sword that devours and cuts either way. There is no movement without damage. There may be a wordplay here with the description of the sword with two mouths, and the subject of the passage being the words of her mouth, which also have two sides to them. Sounds really good, but it leads to death. The irony is cut by the idiom. So where does this end up? Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. The word for hell is Sheol, Hebrew. This is the ultimate end. It could be a ruined life, or it could be death by a wronged husband. But like if you're committing adultery with someone else's wife, the husband finds out and he kills you, it's a possible end to your adulterous affair. You should consider that, son. Don't be an idiot. Like, don't be an idiot. Or it could be venereal disease that'll just consume your body. That's part of it. Her flattery keeps you from thinking straight, right? Lest thou shouldst ponder the path of life. Her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. So, sounds kind of funny. Basically, it's like her words confuse you. You don't think straight. And her ways wander from the paths of life. But because they wander away, they're movable, like they're not steadfast and straight. The idea. You don't know it. She's pulling you off the path of righteousness, and you can't tell because you're not thinking straight. You're not thinking with this here. Be thinking with this up here. Come on, son. What are the results here? Hear me now, therefore, O you children, depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her. Come not nigh to the door of her house. Again, it's just like back in chapter 4, where it's like avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. Like don't even go near. Don't even go near her house. Right? Run. What happens? Lest thou give thine honor to others and thy years to the cruel. Honor, the idea of honor here is like the best years of your life will be wasted. And you'll give your wealth to strangers, lest strangers be filled with thy wealth and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. That word for stranger is the same word up here as verse 3, the lips of a strange woman. So, lest prostitute be filled with your wealth. She'll take her coin. Now you're just wasting your money. And thy labors be in the house of a stranger. Like, well, yeah, you're just throwing your money away. It doesn't matter who it is. I mean, in his day, you'd have to wander to their house, probably the whorehouse, or if you're going to the temple prostitute, if you have some kind of sexualized worship, you would still have to pay. Maybe an animal sacrifice, or you would pay some money, but there was something you had to pay. Go sleep with the temple prostitute. That was your worship. So that way the order of the world would continue. Because the gods, the sky god and the earth goddess, they have to come together sexually in order for the earth to produce fruit. So you have to reenact that with the temple prostitute in order for the gods to go, oh yeah, we got to keep doing our job. That was the thinking. You still have to pay for it though. All your money's going away. That's a lot rare. I don't know, maybe not a lot more rare, but it's pretty rare in our day and age. It's all online, basically. You can still waste a lot of money on porn or OnlyFans or fill in the blank. You're just throwing money away. But it's supporting this person. That would be a stupid argument. Your flesh is consumed. Yeah, lest the strangers be filled with thy wealth, thy labors be in the house of a stranger, and thou mourn at the last when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. Like, fill in the blank with venereal disease. Then your reputation is ruined. You come to complete ruin. And say, how have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to them that instructed me. This is the person who realizes that he didn't listen to his father. Chapter begins with what? Incline your ear, right? Bow thine ear to my understanding. Attend to my wisdom. And eventually, had all your fun, done what you wanted to do, come to the end of it, and it's utter ruin, destruction, and death. And you go, man, someone taught me better. Sometimes that's what it takes for someone to come around. Sometimes you're the prodigal son that just goes and does your own thing. It's like, you were not raised to live this way. Why are you doing this? They go off and they do their thing. Like, what do you do with that? You pray. And you go, hopefully they will come to their senses. Prodigal son does. And we'll be like, oh, how have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined my ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil. What that means is I almost came to complete ruin in the midst of the congregation of the assembly. So your reputation among others, trashed. But if you repent, like, how does Jesus treat the woman caught in adultery? Draws a line in the sand, goes, hey, he who has the first sin, cast the first stone. Or he who has not sinned, cast the first stone. Everybody drops their rocks, and they all walk away. He goes, oh, where's your accusers? So, and remember, she's caught in the very act of adultery. Like, I think it was a setup. But basically, they're doing it, and they rip her out of the bed, throw her at Jesus' feet. What are you going to do with this? One sin no more. Like, there's hope. Like, this is bleak, this is bad. Like, it's all bad, right? This description, but these are the consequences. If you're going to live wisely, you need to know the consequences of those actions. Like, and you teach your children those. But eventually, they're going to choose. They're going to make a choice on what they want to do, and sometimes it takes them going through terrible things to learn the lesson that wisdom would have taught them in the first. And that's hard because parent, well, unless I'm not there yet. I haven't experienced that, so I can't just be like, yeah, do this and yeah, it's awesome. And I know by experience. I don't. I've seen kind of how my parents handle my older brother, but they weren't in the Bible. They weren't teaching us But sometimes, yeah, you'll have to experience the consequences before you learn. And that's hard. I guess I've seen that with a friend, and it's like, I wish I could make you do the right thing. That's what I feel. Like, this is going to hurt you so much worse. Why are you doing this? I wish I could stop you from doing this. And then they do it anyways. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll be here for when you realize that you made a mistake, and I'll help you pick up the pieces. And that demonstration of grace speak louder because you're not hating them, loving them. All right, so there's the bad. Talk about the good sex. What talks about? Talk about we'll talk about that next week. It was really difficult. I kind of extended this part because there's a translation thing here in verses 16 and 17 that me and Tammy spent hours trying to. I've read so many commentaries on verses 16 and 17, trying to figure out what this means. It's well, it might be all right here. This I'll just have it up on the screen and be like, here are the options. Okay, let's move on. Like, like it might be that kind of thing. Because I'm still thinking about it. It's kind of hard, but we'll talk about that next week. Thank you for your attention. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for the warning against adultery, against going to the prostitute, against just pursuing that. I mean, for me, on a phone or a computer. Thank you for the warning. Thank you for wisdom. Pray, Lord, that we would take this in and apply it where it's needed. Lord, also, thank you for your grace. I mean, this is a temptation for everybody. It might not be the same as mine, but it is a crucial area of life where we need good, solid teaching. I'm grateful for your word that it gives us that. Father, help us to worship you, be with Pastor, and be preaching on the crucifixion today. That's always so difficult. Lord, thank you for doing that for us. Thank you for suffering all the things that we deserve, dying the death that we deserve, so we can have eternal life. Help us never to forget that, and help us to be grateful for the resurrection in Jesus' name.